Hi guys, it's Dave here. I'm just going to do this quick video to show you a few things from the new Heavy Gear Living Rulebook, some upgrades and some improvements we've made. For anyone who's new, I'd like to introduce to you a Heavy Gear. This is a Hunter. A Hunter is a standard line general purpose gear used by the North, copied many times in the forms of the Jaeger gear for the South, Chasseur for Nucol, and Warrior for Peace River, though some of those models have some slight differences. The Hunter is your basic general gear. It's cheap, it's numerous, it's effective, it forms most of your army. So each model in the game of Heavy Gear is described by its attributes. So this right here is an example of an attribute line. We haven't done any fancy formatting since we're still in the living beta of the Living Rulebook. So I'm just going to go through some of these just to help you understand what some of the terminology is. So your basic model has a name called, in this case, it's a Hunter. If it was a Hunter variant, such as a model with different weapons, for example, you might have a Hunter with what's called a snub cannon. This is a short-barreled artillery piece designed for short-range, low accuracy, bunker busting, and other such stuff. Works great on gears if you can hit them. Then that model would be given a different name. In the case of the Hunter with the snub cannon, it would be called an Assault Hunter. The name of the model, as long as it's a Hunter model, then any Hunter can have an upgrade which is labeled Hunter upgrade. The TV stands for threat value. Your army has a TV or threat value rating. Give it either 50 points, 100 points, or 150 points. And this is how many points it costs you out of your total amount to add this model to your army. UA stands for unit availability. In the case of the Hunter, there's a lot of different units that the Hunter can join. Hunters can join the GP, or General Purpose Squad, and if they do, then you can have 0+, any number of Hunters in the unit. It can also go in FS, which is Fire Support, and ST, Strider, and HT, Heavy Tank. In Strider and Heavy Tank units, the Hunter is an escort model. It helps to form a protective barrier around the tank or Strider, protect it from any models moving in close to do melee attacks. In the Fire Support unit, a Hunter can provide a cheap addition to the unit to increase the size of the unit, or just to bulk out the numbers. You notice that the basic Hunter cannot be taken in a strike unit. It's because strike units are elite units, and they are usually only variant models are allowed in there. The next one is the movement rating. In the case of the Hunter, it can walk 5 inches or use ground 6 inches. Ground movement is whenever the Hunter is moving, it can use these wheels in its feet. You can see a little bit on the back of the ankles there. But it has wheels in its feet that it can engage to go a bit faster. The downside of this is in walker mode, a model can turn any number of times. So effectively you can just move 5 inches. You don't have to measure carefully for turns or anything like that. You just turn. In ground movement, your turn's a little more limited. You're only allowed one turn per move. So if my model is trying to go really fast, he might go, I'm going to say he's going to go top speed this turn, and he'd get to make one move. If he went top speed, he would get to go, instead of one move, it would be 2 moves, and he could make one turn in each of those moves, beginning, middle, or end. The armor rating is as how much you subtract from the total of your attacker's damage. So if you're hit by an attack, subtract this number from the total to reduce the amount of damage caused. H/S stands for hull structure. So in this case, the Hunter is a tough model, so it is a 4 hull and 2 structure. And this is relative. So a model with armor 8 might have only a hull of 3 and a structure of 3, but because it has 8 armor, it would be a lot. It would be able to survive more attacks than a model with only 6 armor. A stands for action. This is the number of times this model can shoot a weapon or make a melee attack during each round. GU stands for gunnery, or gunnery skill. A skill is a thing that allows a model to improve the rolls that it makes. So the better your gunnery skill, and a lower number is a better gunnery skill, makes it easier to add bonuses to your attack rolls. A gunnery skill of 3+ would be better than a gunnery skill of 4+ because on a 4 or more you have to roll a 4, 5, or 6 in order to improve an attack roll with secondary dice. But if you're 3, 4, 5, or 6, then it's a 3. If it's a 3+, then it's a 3, 4, 5, or 6 to improve it. A 2+ would be even better. Piloting a 4+, same deal. But in this case, piloting is used whenever you have to make a defensive roll, or whenever you try to make a melee attack, or if you have to make any kind of special melee attacks or any kind of special piloting roll for dangerous terrain. EW stands for Electronic Warfare and Communications. So this is the skill number you need to make if you're going to try to do an unskilled comms test, or you need to try to, as a commander, command your models from a distance. This is the number you're going to use to try to make those rolls. Your basic weapons list, and this is a shorthand to make it simple. There's about 10 weapons that every army uses, and you'll learn them pretty quickly when you play the game. AC stands for autocannon, and LAC stands for light autocannon. Every weapon always has a prefix, either L for light, M for medium, or H for heavy. And this just tells you how big that weapon is. And those weapons always follow a pattern. So with the LAC, a light autocannon has a power of 6, a medium autocannon has a power of 7, and a heavy autocannon has a power of 8. The only difference between the models is the power, or the penetration rating as we often call it, and the range, any other traits, those all stay the same. So every autocannon has the burst 1d6, burst 1 trait, which gives it an extra 1d6 to any attack roll it makes. But in the case of this LAC, because this LAC is on a hunter, hunters are a very well-balanced weapons platform. So in the case of this, the LAC is a perfectly adjusted weapon for it. And so on this model, on a hunter, the LAC not only has the arm arc, but it has the split 2 trait. And the split 2 trait means when you're shooting this weapon, you can fire at 2 targets instead of just 1. Your secondary target is just attacked with an extra -1d6 modifier. We have the LRP. RP stands for Rocket Pack, or Anti-Vehicle Rocket Pack, to give it its correct name. I've got an example right here below it. L stands for Light, so it's a light rocket pack. Light rocket packs are great for hitting a number of models at once and are slightly higher punch than the autocannon, though their accuracy could be termed as less. APGL, Anti-Personnel Grenade Launcher. This is a very short-range weapon that's used to create a burst of grenade explosions around the hunter, protected against infantry attacks. LPZ, or Light Panzerfaust, PZ for Panzerfaust. It's a short-range grenade launcher, and so this is great for anti-armor, but it's very short-range, so it's quite inaccurate. LVB, VB stands for Vibroblade. This is your standard melee weapon in the heavy gear universe. It's a extremely high vibrational frequency weapon, not as powerful as, say, a lightsaber in popular culture, but if you really need to cut through metal or anything, this is what you want to use. Though combine that with the basic strength of a gear, and you've got a weapon that can deal with almost any event. The hunter is very straightforward, so the only trait that it has is arms. Traits are where we would list any special electronic warfare equipment, or melee boosts, or armor boosts, or anything that would improve the gear beyond the basic attributes that are listed here. Over here we've listed it. It's a gear, just in case you need to know that, and its height is 1.5 inches. Some people might have noticed that from the early beta, the Hunter used to have a height of 2 inches. All gears did. But we said, you know what, we need to be a little more accurate with this. So we're going to say this gear is 1.5 inches. There are some gears that are taller, some gears that are smaller. The height is important because in order to get cover, or a cover modifier from any cover you see on the table, that terrain has to have a height of the models. So you need to have at least 3/4 of an inch of height on terrain before it can be considered cover for a gear. Otherwise the gear is just too big. Down here we have an example weapon stat line. This is the common name here is the Anti-Vehicle Rocket Pack, though we call it an RP or LRP, MRP, or HRP, just to tell each other what we're using when we attack. The range for this weapon is 6 to 12 inches is the optimum range, and its maximum range is 24 inches. This also tells you that from 0 from 0 up to 6 inches is going to be suboptimal range, and between 12 and 24 inches is suboptimal range as well. That means there'll be a penalty on it depending on the type of attack that is being used. The important thing to notice about range is that if a model is on this, if the line for 6 inches is on the model, or the model's base rather, then you always treat it as being closer, the next closer. So if a model has to be between 6 and 12, not on 6 and 12. If not, it's a suboptimal range. Same thing if it's on the line for 12 inches, then it's going to count as being at the optimal range, not the suboptimal maximum. If it's exactly on 24 inches range, then it's in suboptimal, it's not out of range, not until it's beyond 24 inches. Okay. Right here, this is the light penetration rating, the medium penetration, and the heavy penetration rating. So if you have an LRP, then you're using a pen rating of 7, a medium LRP uses a pen rating of 8, and a heavy rating uses a pen rating of 9. This is a nice shorthand that lets us illustrate some differences between weapons size without actually having to have a whole new different weapon. The basic trait for all LRPs, regardless of type, is an AE 4-inch, and this is a radius of 4 inches centered on the model. And any other model in that area can be hit by an attack. You have to roll that separately. I'm going to explain a little bit here in another video about some of the changes to blasts and area effects and what that does to the heavy gear game. There's the anti-vehicle rocket pack has 2 types. It has ballistic and indirect. So a ballistic weapon type means that whenever you fire it at suboptimal range, you're going to have a minus 1d6 modifier on your attack roll. Has no other effect, but if you want to, you can also fire the anti-vehicle rocket pack indirect. And indirect weapons have a minus 1d6 modifier at optimal range and a minus 2d6 modifier at suboptimal range. And you notice that this is a fairly narrow range here for the anti-vehicle rocket pack. The advantage is that if you fire the weapon indirectly, it'll ignore the cover modifier of the target, unless that target's in some kind of area terrain that is taller than it. So if it's in a building, or if there's scaffolding, or it's underneath some kind of machinery that's passing through a refinery of some kind, then it can still get cover against the indirect attack. Indirect is also great because you don't need to have lock. You don't have to see your target in order to fire. So you can also call down a number of indirect fire shots from models based on what you see. Now, to fire indirect, you don't need a spotter. If you can see your target, you can just fire indirect at it. That's no problem. Usually it's a little bit better to use a spotter because a spotter can get around behind a model. They can get in an angle where there's where they can get a flank modifier to it, and they can call down multiple shots on a target. The other advantage is if you fire your weapon indirectly, you don't have to do that during your model's activation. So you can fire a weapon indirectly, and then during your model's activation, it's used its action to make the attack, but it can still then choose to move, so it doesn't take you any action to move fast, so you can hop and jump around the table a lot quicker by using other models to direct your fire. Okay, my next few videos I'm going to go through some of the basics of some of the weapon attacks, and I'm going to illustrate some changes and differences with the new heavy gear rules. Thanks for watching, and hopefully there'll be lots more videos like this. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to see or particular issues with models that I can illustrate for you, and I'll be going over those. Thanks very much.